There's what, 40 million millionaires in the US today. There's 21 million coins. Do the math. Like every millionaire can't even own a Bitcoin at a fully, like without Bitcoins being lost. You're probably actually looking at maybe 16 million ultimate Bitcoins being in circulation at this point when you account for, the Bitcoins being lost. So you're almost talking about every millionaire only being able to own 1/3 of a Bitcoin at that point. All of that being said, it's like, all right, well, most of them are already, being held by people, right? So the number of people that currently own Bitcoin, I think, is like 150 million. So that puts you, 150 million divided by 7.8 billion is.
Hey, welcome back everybody to Altcoin Daily. Today we are joined by the man, the legend, Brandon Green, the Chief of Staff for Bitcoin Inc., which is the parent company of the Bitcoin Conference and Bitcoin Magazine. Psyched to talk to him about the conference and about Bitcoin. I'm going to ask him some really interesting questions about Bitcoin. But Brandon, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Aaron. Sorry. Excited to join you. Excited to chat. Conference is less than a week away. So, it's game time.
I'm going to be there. Been talking to all my friends. I know a lot of my buddies in crypto and kind of like not in the public eye of crypto are going to be there. Use code Altcoin Daily, 10% off. Before we get into that though, give us a little bit of your backstory for the audience. How'd you get into Bitcoin? How'd you get into crypto?
Yeah, so I got into Bitcoin the beginning of 2017. I was just graduating college, and David Bailey, our CEO, went to the same university as me, Alabama. And he was a few years older than me, but I had heard of his legendary sort of status already about starting this Bitcoin company back in 2013. And I graduated. I had a whole other job, but I had a free summer, and I basically asked him, you need someone to move boxes for you over the summer so I can come learn about what this Bitcoin thing is. And he said, yeah, come on. And so, the rest is kind of history, but, I've been learning from probably one of the top, minds in all of Bitcoin for the past 5 years. So it's been cool to be mentored and kind of learn the ins and outs.
Totally. And you're a speaker at the Bitcoin conference. I assume you've been to the Bitcoin conference before. I've never been before. What can we expect for those of us who are going?
Yeah. And so we were talking earlier, I didn't mention this, but I'm also one of the heads of content for the conference. I was the head of content for the last year's conference. And then, as you see, there's 5 stages, there's tons of content, 3 days, needed some help. So we have a team now doing it, P, Harper, we're a killer team. But so I'm on that as well. But yeah, I'm speaking at the conference. I'm super excited about it. It's going to be, when I talk to people on our team about what we're really doing, the way that I view it is, in some respects, we're throwing a party. We are, the speakers are kind of, here's who's going to be there, make sure you come to our party. And then our job from there is really making sure that like we craft an experience that's stimulating, that is interesting, that, pushes people's understanding a little bit further, and that ultimately, creates an excitement and an earnest kind of want to dig into Bitcoin more and ask yourself, what can I do with my skill set that helps kind of advance the cause of a permissionless global currency that, is censorship resistant and decentralized, and, all the beautiful things that come along with Bitcoin.
Sure. Censorship resistant, permissionless, unconfiscatable if you take care of it properly, all that cool stuff.
Exactly.
Now, normally when we get Bitcoiners on, for interviews, we ask them, their thoughts in 2022 or kind of like the more short to midterm. When we were talking off camera, you mentioned like a bigger picture outlook. So when I'm interested, 10 years down the road, what are your kind of predictions for how Bitcoin's going to change things or where Bitcoin's going to be?
Oof, good question. So I'll give you 2 things. So first of all, where we are in this cycle, right? I kind of view Bitcoin as having these 4-year cycles that are, demarked by the halving, right? Nothing crazy there. I think what we saw for this past cycle was really interesting. I think that it was in a lot of ways a disappointing cycle for Bitcoin. We haven't seen that blow off top. We haven't seen the mania phase and all of that. I think there are two things that were different this time, and not in a way of like this time it's different, but in just kind of nuanced, sort of like random almost happenings. Number one was that in early 2021, like January, Elon Musk came out and threw his support behind Bitcoin. Tesla put it on the balance sheet. They accepted it for cars, et cetera, et cetera. And I believe that that kicked off a mini mania phase that really pulled interest forward from where everyone would have been getting in towards the top at the end of the year, where you would normally have that kind of cyclical top. Everyone instead piled in and speculated and got all excited in the beginning of the cycle. And so number one, I think that like kind of messed things up, and it's all Elon's fault, right? And it changed fundamentally the way that the price cycle sort of looks. That's number one. Number two is that we had this supply chain dislocation for miners, and part of my thesis and our thesis about how the cycle works is that towards the top you start seeing a whole bunch of hash power come onto the market because the profitability of mining increases with the price. And that hash power piles on until eventually almost all miners are basically in the negative. At least way more than 50% of the miners are actually losing money when they have their machines on, at which point they all have to start A, selling their Bitcoins, and then B, eventually turning their miners off. And because of the supply chain dislocations, no miners were being delivered in this entire cycle until, let's say, 4 months ago. And it was caused by COVID and all this kind of stuff, right? But it really has created this situation now where like the mining pressure has not come online yet. We're just kind of hitting all-time highs post China ban, and that's really just because like a lack of delivery of these new ASICs. So what that means is that like right now we're in this interesting moment where like macro is turning bearish, the legacy market's turning bearish. The Bitcoin price has like traded sideways, sort of, is starting to inch up, but we have this looming sell pressure coming from the miners that just hasn't hit yet. And so I see us in kind of this short term, let's say by the end of the year kind of window, where you could see another run up, you could see trading sideways, you could see kind of all sorts of things. It feels like chaos right now before we have that, kind of closing the door of the cycle of the miner, the hash power coming on and the sell pressure kind of coming on the market. So all of that is kind of how I'm seeing 2022. Now, if you're going to look at the next 10 years, I mean, our conference last year, as El Salvador announced Bitcoin as legal tender, right? Like that was a huge new chapter in the story of crypto broadly, and especially Bitcoin. I would say in the next 10 years, you're going to have a tension arise in the market between decentralized cryptos and your central bank digital currencies that are ultimately tools of surveillance and totalitarianism. I hope that doesn't sound like too extreme. I think it's fairly obvious if you look at how they function. And what's going to happen is that CBDCs are going to get phased into the market and make everyone very comfortable with the same interface that Bitcoin truly is, and it will narrow the number of barriers for people to enter into Bitcoin and the number of kind of arenas by which Bitcoin is compared to a US dollar. No one will keep comparing it to cash because cash is going to get phased out whether we like it or not. So from that perspective, I think the narrative for the average person is going to become a lot stronger, and they're going to see a lot more incentives for them to actually park their money into Bitcoin. And so because of that, I see, the next decade as being this giant adoption curve of Bitcoin that, fundamentally changes the way society works. We'll leave it at that because, there's a lot to unpack there.
Mm-hmm. So with like a continuation of things we've seen in the last couple of years where, big companies putting it on their balance sheet, small nations adopting it as their currency, different entities adopting it in their reserves. Would you think a continuation of this?
At the very minimum. I mean, I would expect that medium to large scale countries will be adopting Bitcoin in the next 10 years as legal tender. I see that as a natural result of the Chinese renminbi coming on to, basically compete with the US dollar as the world reserve currency. It will necessitate a neutral option. And I don't think you can call any other currency, scaled enough and neutral enough to compete in that arena. And so Bitcoin will have a crazy geopolitical role to play in the next 10 years. On top of that, I would say that companies putting Bitcoin on their balance sheet will only get them, so far, because they'll want liquidity on that Bitcoin in a way that's not, that's not just going to an exchange and selling it. So I would expect not only for it to join companies' balance sheets, but also for them to start denominating activity in Bitcoin, for you to be able to make purchases or sale, them to be able to do sales in Bitcoin denominated terms, especially for, again, multinational corporations that are trying to navigate a trade situation that exists between two titans of global reserve currency competition. And so Bitcoin's going to be their only solution to not make sub one angry.
Mm-hmm. I think Bitcoin will be a unit of account eventually. I mean, it's a unit of account for many Bitcoiners, many people in crypto, but for like these bigger entities, these more legacy entities, you think it's going to be a unit of account within 10 years?
Yeah, I mean, I would call unit of account like on the spectrum. It's going to be hard to tell, and probably their tax status will kind of dictate ultimately how they're accounting for their Bitcoin. But I think that they will want to be kind of working as Bitcoin natively as possible, so that they can just assuage both sides of what ultimately, like, I just see this as like a Cold War. And so it's like, if you want to be a company, let's take Apple for an example. I'm not saying Apple's going to adopt it in 10 years. I'd be surprised if they didn't. But, if they have all their manufacturing in China, or a portion of their manufacturing in China, and they're also, selling to consumers and exist in the US, why wouldn't they be kind of using Bitcoin as this way of kind of conducting transactions, so that neither China nor the US gets mad at them for like overvaluing one currency over the other, just based on kind of what their day-to-day operational needs are. So that's kind of how I see it. I don't know if unit of account is going to be the exact kind of use case. I think you need far less volatility in the Bitcoin price for people to,
Right.
for big, large scale things to use it as a unit account.
Right. So I feel like what we're talking about, and this is hyper-Bitcoinization, is something often talked about in Bitcoin conversations. Is that what we're talking about? What exactly is hyper-Bitcoinization, and do you put stock into that theory?
Oh yeah, well, we're a hyper-Bitcoinization company. So, our mantra is furthering the cause of hyper-Bitcoinization. I think that, it's so hard to chart out. The old Wittgenstein or whatever. Of course, Bitcoin is not becoming the global currency for everyone, but let's pretend that it was becoming it. What would we look for, right? Like, what would be the kind of the hallmark signals that Bitcoin is truly being adopted as in some sort of hyper Bitcoinization form? And you would see countries adopting it as legal tender, companies putting on their balance sheet to hedge, currency risk and inflation risk, people who are being marginalized by society turning to Bitcoin as a way to kind of protect their wealth, and creating communities that transact in Bitcoin kind of as their own, closed system. And all these things, I mean, are happening in real time. And it's like, sometimes you just want to like take the people who aren't watching this, as closely as we are, and just like shake them, be like, hello, like, wake up. Like, this is crazy that this is happening right now. And it's, it's happening faster than I think anyone would expect. I mean, if you said what 2009 was, let's say 12 years ago and some change, 12 years ago, if you said this brand new thing that you've never heard of is going to be used by countries as legal tender, and corporations as like one of their most important financial tools for hedging risk, in a decade, a decade and some change, like, you would say, what the hell are you talking about? Right? Like, that's absurd. And yet here we are. So, what another 12 years brings is just going to be, I mean, it'll boggle the mind. It'll boggle the mind.
Hmm. Yeah, totally. I mean, I don't think like people have come into the market in the past couple of years don't realize that Bitcoin's now 13 years oldish. For Bitcoin's, when Bitcoin first started, nobody heard about it. Bitcoin's first 5-10 years, it was a pariah in the media. And now all of a sudden we have this little perception shift in the media and in popular culture. Well, now people realize it's here to stay and all this stuff. And, we can, how's it going to go even further going forward?
Yeah, totally. And so, to give you, I guess, a little taste of kind of what we're going to be talking about in our panel anyway, is
When is your panel?
so it's the Cosmic Bitcoin Mining panel. It's one of the last panels on the mining stage. I think mining is just the coolest thing in the world. So that's where I wanted to kind of plug into the content.
Yeah, make
It'll
it
be
cool.
at
Because I feel like a lot of people, it's like, okay, mining. I want it to be cool though.
yeah, exactly. No, this is it'll be on the 8th at 2:15 p.m. if anyone wants to come check it out. But the what we're going to be talking about are things like, all right, Bitcoin becomes let's say a $10 trillion asset, which isn't that crazy, right?
That would take the market cap
Mining,
of gold.
yeah, overtake the market cap of gold.
A five
Mining
hundred
at that
thousand
point,
dollar Bitcoin. Sorry to interrupt.
oh, you're good, you're good. Yeah, $500,000 Bitcoin, exactly. So you're mining what 900 Bitcoin is a day. So let's see, 500,000. I'm just pulling out a calculator here. Times 900. I have all this math somewhere, but I just don't have it in front of me. That'd be all right. You've got a 450 million dollars a day being mined at that point. If you had the current emission rate, right? Well, no, yeah, at the current emission rate. So 450 million a day in dollar terms being mined times 365. So that is what do we got here? That's $164 billion industry that year. $164 billion are being mined. All right, well, that puts you already in like crazy. This is revenue terms, right? Like we're not talking valuation of a company kind of thing. Like this is 1 year's worth of revenue. That puts you as like already one of the largest industries in the entire world. Already one of the biggest revenue kind of streams in the entire world. Then Bitcoin 100x's, or usually 100x's every 4 years. Let's say it even 10x's from there in the next decade. You're talking then about there'll be a halvening, so cut the number in half, but 10x it, a $800 billion a year number that you're looking at. You can start getting into trillions of years or trillions of dollars a year in terms of mining just in the next 10 years. And so what does that open up? All right, well, if you can go capture 10% of that market, it's $100 billion market at $1 trillion a year. And so what are you willing to spend for $100 billion? You can be building nuclear power plants. You can be building, solar farms that power the entire world. I mean, you can be built, like the energy infrastructure is going to be crazy. You're going to want to be building schools that teach people how to not only create new chips, but also mining rigs, and also how to run a mining, farm, how to, hedge risk in the Bitcoin mining system, like all this kind of stuff. Education will reorient around this. This is an industrial revolution we're talking about. And then here's the thing, that's in 10 years. In 20 years, if you want to, let's say, I mean, these are such bearish numbers, but 20x that, and you're saying in 20 years, you would be expecting $20 trillion a year being mined. If you have 10% of that, it's a $2 trillion a year problem to solve. All right, now you're talking about going to space. You're talking about creating colonies on the moon in order to mine Bitcoin. You're creating colonies on Mars, where you can create much larger nuclear facilities that can, create bukus of energy with minimal risk to civilization because it's on a totally another planet, right? And like, how do you factor that into the course of humanity right now? That in 20 years, you're talking about real economic incentives to be building colonies on other planets in order to just mine Bitcoin. I mean, it's absurd. It's crazy to think about. And so, like, who's preparing for this? Who is ready to build the companies that are going to be required in order to make this happen? I mean, it's going to be this huge demand that needs to be met with some sort of supply, and it's going to happen very quickly. So, that's the kind of stuff that I'm thinking about. This is the kind of stuff that I want to talk about at this conference. It should be fascinating. That's just one thing, though. One mini kind of thread to pull on.
Yeah. I'll tell you who's preparing for it, the Altcoin Daily audience. And with all of that being said, I love the way you're thinking about this stuff. Bitcoin right now, about like $40,000, somewhere around there. How much Bitcoin, how much percentage of a Bitcoin, how many Satoshis do you think the average person could save up today that maybe they'd be considered wealthy in the future?
Like, we're talking fractions of Bitcoin at this point. I mean, what you would need in order, so right, there's what, 40 million millionaires in the US today. There's 21 million coins. Do the math. Like, every millionaire can't even own a Bitcoin at a fully, like, without Bitcoins being lost. You're probably actually looking at maybe 16 million ultimate Bitcoins being in circulation at this point when you account for, the Bitcoins being lost. So you're almost talking about every millionaire only being able to own 1/3 of a Bitcoin at that point. All of that being said, it's like, all right, well, most of them are already, being held by people, right? So the number of people that currently own Bitcoin, I think, is like 150 million. So that puts you, what, 150 million divided by 7.8 billion is a lot of math today. Divided by 7,800. Yeah, so like maybe 2% of the world owning Bitcoin, which honestly seems high, but we'll go with it. You're talking about an additional 98% of the world yet to adopt Bitcoin and yet to have any sort of value in it. I would bet that if you own 0.0001 Bitcoins, you're probably never going to have to really worry about money, which is crazy to think about. But that's because the game is going to get stratified because you have so many wealthy folks who are sitting on so much Bitcoin. They're going to be playing the games that I'm talking about. They're going to be doing spacefaring. They're going to be they're going to be propagating life among the stars. All right. And so if you're talking about the wealth, required to have a comfortable life here on Earth and scale out sort of, the things that we seek here with status and, access and, post scarce resources, like, I think 0.0001 Bitcoin should be plenty to kind of never worry about money.
Isn't that just like $5 worth of Bitcoin today?
Thereabouts, yeah.
Crazy times, man. Crazy times.
Yeah.
Appreciate you dropping this alpha, man.
Sure. I mean, call it alpha, call it the gut check sort of numbers, but yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think like the system that's being adopted in real time, and we haven't seen anything yet.
Now, as we're wrapping up this interview, I want to talk about the Bitcoin conference. First of all, George hinted at some stuff when I had him on a couple of weeks ago, but he wouldn't tell us everything because he didn't really know everything. Are you privy, as chief of staff, are you privy to the big announcements coming up at Bitcoin Miami 2022?
Maybe.
Give us a hint. What kinds of stuff?
Yeah. So, I'm excited about this strike announcement. I think it's going to be pretty big. Jack's starting to maybe drop some teasers about it, but maybe don't read into him too much. We'll have, I think Samson's going to have a really interesting presentation.
About what? About gaming?
No, about his new Bitcoin bond company.
Mm.
So, he announced that few weeks ago, that he was leaving Blockstream to start this company. And, they have an interesting target audience for their products. We'll put it that way. And then I would say, Peter Thiel. Yeah, so he's one that I am directly working on with his content, and he is keeping it very close to the vest. He is giving us only little dribbles of kind of what he's going to be talking about. But the conversation started with him basically saying, what do you want to talk about? Like, we would love to have you in a panel. Like, we were planning on his panel, and he was like, I need to have a solo presentation. And we were like, oh, all right, and he knows, like, obviously he's bought EOS and some other stuff back in the day, but he knows this is Bitcoin focused. Like, this
Everybody
is Bitcoin
makes
only.
mistakes,
Yeah, exactly. So, he's going to have something interesting to say about Bitcoin. I have my guesses about what it's going to be about. I don't know for sure. Inhaled some water. But I think it's going to be interesting. I'll kind of be along for the ride for a couple of these, along with you guys. People are keeping some of their announcements very close to the chest. And, what I do know, obviously I can't share, but it's definitely going to grab some headlines. This conference is going to be big.
Mm-hmm. And then just, my final question is just, can you go over like some of the specific speakers or specific performances or panels that, the people can most look forward to as they're planning their adventure?
Yeah, I don't envy someone who is trying to catch all the content we've got this year. It's everywhere. I mean, it was so impossible basically to try and keep content that's awesome off of other stages at the same time as we have this crazy keynote content on the main stage, and we didn't do it. So, like, you're gonna have to make choices of what to see. Some of the things, I think that this Cathie Wood, Michael Saylor conversation is going to be fascinating. We have this billionaire capital allocators with Orlando Bravo, who is the richest man in Puerto Rico, Dan Tapiero, who's an OG Bitcoiner, hedge fund, runner, Ricardo Salinas, obviously, who's the second richest man in Mexico, and Marcelo Clare, who was running SoftBank and is now, I think, president of Sprint, but also a huge Bitcoiner. So that's going to be a fascinating conversation, talking about how they're looking at Bitcoin today in terms of having 3 commas worth of capital they're allocating. Obviously, Peter Thiel's thing is going to be fascinating. I'm really excited about. So we have this Bitcoin payments conversation that I don't know if you've ever listened to Mallers kind of talk about Bitcoin as a payment rail versus Bitcoin. Yeah. Jack Mallers. So he does a really interesting job of just crafting a narrative about Bitcoin that has nothing to do with number go up. It has nothing to do with the token. It has everything to do, not that there's actually a token, but whatever. It has everything to do with basically the rails that Bitcoin is built to be able to facilitate trustless transactions. And he's been orange pilling the bad guys. He's been orange pilling the IMF. He's been orange pilling the WEF and et cetera, et cetera. So he's got a very strong argument, a very strong narrative. So he's going to be displaying that for us, of course. Bukele is going to be making an announcement. I'm cheating. I'm going through the agenda that I have, which is not the one on the website. But
dude, the amount of net worth at this conference is going to be huge. Just thinking about all these Bitcoiners and all these 3 comma people.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. We were talking about like where you kind of put our conference in terms of like size, scale, and like who's going to be there. Already, I think we might be either the or one of the biggest finance company or conferences ever. We are definitely the biggest, Bitcoin crypto conference. We're gunning for something different though. Like we're not even gunning for South by Southwest. We are gunning for Woodstock meets CES meets the political convention meets like almost a mecca. Like that's what we want to be. we want to be a touch point for everyone, a physical touch point for Bitcoin. And so with that comes the culture of Bitcoin, it comes the technology, it comes the finance side. It's all encompassing. And so because of that, if we think that Bitcoin scales how we think it will, then this conference becomes something. I don't know what it can ultimately become, but it's this. We're in a weird spot where no one else is able to yet, anyway, like kind of bring together at least a portion, a swath of the community that we're doing right now. So, we can build that into something cool, and I think it is building into something cool.
Totally. Appreciate you coming on today, Brandon. Links to Brandon's stuff and Bitcoin Miami down in the description. Use code Altcoin Daily, 10% off. It's not too late. I'll see you there, hopefully. And Brandon, final thoughts for the Altcoin Daily audience.
To the moon.